Hello all, Jay, Rohan and Shreya. Am I audible? Let's discuss. I'm going to share the screen first and just confirm me if it is visible or not. The model answer. After that, we can discuss the answer. Chalo. Let's discuss day third questions and what are the two questions that we have and how to write the answers for them. Chalo. This is the day three question. See, today's syllabus is fundamental rights, right? So how do fundamental rights? Just wait. Yes. So, how do fundamental rights promote the constitutional morality and strengthen the democratic governance in India? So, it's like a analytical question. So, there are a lot of subparts in this question. Illustrate with the suitable examples. First observation is it is 10 mark per question, 150 words you have to write. That means marks distribution is 1 mark for intro, 8 marks for body, and 1 mark for conclusion. The same format, please don't forget. Within the 8 marks, you should write at least 6 to 7 points, 6 to 7 subheadings you have to write. Now, what is the question? We have different fundamental rights. Okay, so these fundamental rights, how they promote constitutional morality, how they promote constitutional morality. That means first you need to know what is meant by constitutional morality, and then how fundamental rights really help in promoting the constitutional morality. That is analytical part, but first you should know what is meant by constitutional morality. And number two, not only that, fundamental rights also strengthen the democratic governance. Democratic governance. So there are two subparts in the question. One thing you have to address, how fundamental rights are going to help in the constitutional morality, and number two, how fundamental rights are establishing democratic governance. And not only that, illustrate with suitable examples. So here you have to give examples how constitutional morality is thriving on fundamental rights, and how democratic governance is thriving on fundamental rights utility. So this is what the core demand of the question. So let us see introduction. Within the introduction, what I generally expect, I expect the definition of constitutional morality, the need for democratic governance, and the use of the fundamental rights. And examples, even examples are asking. Na? So just you can quote one or two examples in the introduction also. Let us see the introduction. Constitutional morality means morality, right? Morality means simply values. Any value if an individual holds, that is called as moral value. Now here constitutional morality, that means the values are not of ethical in, not only ethical in nature, but they are constitutional in nature. So if an individual is holding the values which are of constitutionally mentioned values, that is nothing but simply having the commitment to the core democratic ideals. So what are the constitutional values we have? Liberty, we have equality, we have fraternity. So simply these values are embedded in the constitution, right? That is what constitutional morality is all about. So did you get the point? What is constitutional morality? An individual is holding values, okay, and these values are from constitution. And what are the values? Liberty, equality, justice, and fraternity. So if somebody is holding these values which are constitutional in nature, we say that person is having constitutional morality. That is the idea. So constitutional morality is the commitment to the core democratic ideals. And what are they? Liberty, equality, fraternity. And these are embedded in the constitution. Excellent starting. Just within 2 lines, I could able to explain the definition. Now, moving beyond mere adherence to its written text. Okay, moving beyond mere adherence to written text. That means whatever which is written in the constitution, not only that, even beyond the constitution, some values are there which are derived in nature. And that is what exactly the constitutional morality is all about. That's the very good introduction. Now coming to the second point, fundamental rights. This part also we have to address. So part 3 of the Indian Constitution is about fundamental rights. This is the vehicle for enforcing this morality. That means to achieve liberty, you need fundamental rights. To achieve equality, you need fundamental rights. To achieve fraternity, you need fundamental rights. That's the issue. So fundamental rights is like a vehicle for constitutional morality, and ensuring democratic governance does not degenerate into majoritarian tyranny. That means if the governance has to be done in a democratic manner, if it is not to be gone into majoritarian hands, then what we needed? Constitutional morality. For that, what we needed? Fundamental rights. So that is what an ideal introduction should look like. Constitutional morality definition, the use of fundamental rights in ensuring the democratic governance. Now let us see the body. How fundamental rights are helping in promoting the constitutional morality. Fundamental rights, they instill the constitutional morality by establishing a framework of substantive justice. This is very, very important. See, justice can be of two types. One is substantive justice, another one is literal or superficial justice. So substantive justice means not only visible justice, even at the spirit, at the spirit also, not by letter, even by the spirit, justice should be done. So these fundamental rights will give this constitutional morality a substantive framework for achieving the justice. So that restrains the state power and transforms the social norms. So simply I am giving an example that why fundamental rights are needed. Why they are needed? State power is unlimited. If it is unlimited, obviously it leads to arbitrariness. So to restrain the state power, what we needed? Fundamental rights, so that we can establish the constitutional morality. That is the idea. Now, how fundamental rights are establishing constitutional morality? Number one, this counter majoritarian check. That means if the government or if the democracy is dominated by certain sections, only one particular community or only one particular political party or one particular like that. So such identity based politics, if they happen, to counter the majoritarian check, to act as a check on the majoritarian governance, obviously fundamental rights will act as the check. So democracy is not merely the rule of the majority. Fundamental rights protect the marginalized people, even those who are not represented in the government. They have to be protected. That is the idea. So fundamental rights will protect everybody. Every individual is guaranteed the political rights. So marginalized people are protected, minority groups are protected from what? The overreach. The overreach of whom? Legislative overreach and societal overreach. So simple, ఈ పాయింట్ ఏం చెప్తుంది అంటే గవర్నెన్స్ కనుక మెజారిటేరియన్ సైడ్ వెళ్తుంటే అప్పుడు మైనారిటీస్ కి ప్రాబ్లం వస్తుంది. సో అలాంటి టైంలో మెజారిటేరియనిజం కి ఒక చెక్ పెట్టాలి. వీ నీడ్ టు హ్యావ్ ఎ చెక్, అండ్ ఆ చెక్ పెట్టడానికి మనకి ఫండమెంటల్ రైట్స్ యూజ్ అవుతాయి అనేది ఐడియా. సో ఎగ్జాంపుల్, నవతేజ్ సింగ్ జోహార్ కేస్, సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ డీక్రిమినలైజ్ ద హోమోసెక్షువాలిటీ. That means homosexual people are minority people, majority are heterosexual people, but still for these homosexual people we gave the freedom, we gave the rights, we recognized the rights. That is what Navtej Singh Johar case. So that constitutional morality must outweigh the majoritarian social morality. That is what under article 14, 15, 21 which is there in that. So Supreme Court has clearly said constitutional morality should be the upper hand, not the majoritarian morality. Constitutional morality should be upper hand. That's what the idea. So these examples are very, very important, sir. So first thing is fundamental rights will act as a check on the majoritarianism. Next, number two, inherited hierarchies. See, generally every family will inherit what? Not only their power, not only their prestige, their property, even the social status. So every family will inherit something. In the same way, every society will have these hierarchical systems, and most of them are inherited. So to dismantle these inherited hierarchies, obviously fundamental rights are used. For example, caste system. What is caste system? It is a hierarchical system and it is inherited across the generations. Now to get people out of this caste system exploitation, obviously we need fundamental rights. So that is how constitutional morality is supported by the fundamental rights. Let us see. Constitutional morality demands egalitarian society. What is egalitarian society? A classless society, a casteless society, and no divisions exist in the society. That is what egalitarianism. So constitutional morality drives the idea of egalitarianism. Now fundamental rights will actually help to dismantle all the historical injustices. For example, article 17, fundamental right, what it does? Abolition of untouchability. So untouchability was there since ages. It was an inherited hierarchy system. So that was abolished by fundamental rights. So here fundamental rights are helping in achieving what? Constitutional morality of equality. That is the idea. So article 23, prohibition of human trafficking and forced labor. Again, this forced labor, the concept of vetti chagiri in Telangana we say. So this concept of vetti is dismantled by what? Article 23. So now everybody is having that freedom. Rather than forced labor, everybody can go for whatever the work they can do. So this transforms the social order, reflecting the transformative constitutionalism which is envisioned by the Ambedkar. See, I have been using these words like transformative constitutionalism. This is like the role of the constitution and the set of ideas which are mentioned in the constitution is for what? To transform the society. That's the meaning of this. So what is the first thing I said? Fundamental rights are important to achieve constitutional morality. Okay. And number two, in which ways? The first way I have discussed what? The first point I have discussed what? Majoritarianism. So if the fundamental rights are there, obviously majoritarianism will be checked. And second point I am saying is fundamental rights are just wait. Fundamental rights are important for what? For dismantling the caste system, for dismantling the religious injustices, for dismantling the other cultural injustices. That is what fundamental rights, how constitutional morality is pushed. Number three, individual dignity is important, and that core value is protected by fundamental rights. And individual dignity is nothing but constitutional value, and that is nothing but constitutional morality. Yes, so fundamental rights ensure that individual remains the local or the focal point of the constitution. And what is the example? Shabarimala judgment. Being a woman, being a woman, I should have the right to enter into the temple. Yes or no? So maybe you may be saying other social reasons or cultural reasons, religious reasons, but should I be treated equally or not is the question. So constitution says yes, everybody is equal. That is what constitutional morality. So here comes individual dignity, and fundamental rights will help in giving access to the temples to women also. Example is Shabarimala judgment. The court prioritized women's right to worship under which article? Article 25, and the right to dignity under Article 21. That is what right to life and privacy. So over the collective right of religious denomination, because what is the collective right? Society says Shabarimala temple should not be opened for women, but is that to be followed? No, because constitution says everybody has that right to worship, everybody has that right to dignity. So it is prevailing over the collective right. That's the idea. So enforcing the constitutional morality over the restrictive traditional practices. I have given three important dimensions how fundamental rights are helping in promoting the constitutional morality. Now second half of the answer, what is that? How fundamental rights strengthen democratic governance. This is the second half of the answer. While part 3 dictates the moral compass of the state, it also establishes practical mechanisms for accountability. See, these things are like you need not write. We don't expect you to write these points. Just we are giving for a flow. For the answer flow, we have written these statements. Only directly enter into the side headings. What are they? To achieve democratic governance, how fundamental rights are used. Number one, transparency and accountability is possible with fundamental rights. A democracy needs informed citizenry, right? So obviously, only when there are informed citizenry, the state will be accountable. So example is Right to Information Act, and what is it is making? It is giving power to the individuals. It is giving power to the citizens. RTI Act, and because of that, Article 19(1)(a) is simply promoting constitutional morality only, because everybody now can go to the state offices and they can ask for the information, and when they ask for the information, state will be always accountable to the people. So this making accountable, making transparent, that means democratic governance is possible. So with the use of the fundamental right article 19, we are able to achieve the transparency. That is what democratic governance. So this connection you should establish properly. Now example, electoral bonds case, the scheme was there to 2024 scheme. It was struck down by the Supreme Court recently. Why? Anonymous political funding. That means anonymous means against the transparency. There is no transparency. Who is funding which political party? Nobody knows. So this anonymous nature is there. Na? This is violating the citizens' fundamental right to know. So who is supporting which party? Nobody knows. So maybe criminalization of politics is happening. Maybe some crony capitalism is happening at the background. Nobody knows, right? So right to know. This is essential for participative democracy. And right now Supreme Court said no, electoral bonds is not constitutionally valid. For that reason, it is completely struck down. So you are writing one point, analytical point, and one example. What is the analytical point? Fundamental rights are really helping. Article 19 is helping in achieving the transparency. And what is the example? Electoral bond scheme was completely struck off. So this is how we can write. Now, what are the other ways we can achieve this democratic governance? Rule of law. Yes or no? So rule of law. If there is no rule of law, obviously no country can have democratic governance. So how this rule of law is possible? Democratic governance requires no entity, not even the state, is above the law. That means everybody is below the law. Law, according to the law, should be all the adjudication should happen. So that's the idea. Fundamental rights will prevent what? Arbitrary executive actions and arbitrary legal actions. Only law should prevail, not anybody's personal interest. That is ensured by the fundamental rights. For example, Article 14. So equality before the law. What it says? It of manifest arbitrariness is frequently used to strike down the unconstitutional laws. So simply Article 14 is used to strike down different laws on basis of the pretext of equality is violated. Okay, ensuring governance is based on the reasonable principles and not see, you need not write all these things. Just simply put Article 14. That's enough. So rule of law is possible only with fundamental rights. Example is Article 14, because everybody is equal under the law. Next, judicial review. Supreme Court has this judicial review under Article 32. Yes or no? So Article 32, right to constitutional remedies, it ensures what? The guaranteed part of the fundamental rights which is enforceable Now Supreme Court enforcing these fundamental rights by using the Article 32. So that is like a institutional guarantor of the democratic checks and balances. So you can write one point is rule of law is upheld. Number two, judicial review is possible. Only then democratic governance is possible. And third one, transparency and accountability is possible with fundamental rights. So this is how you can build an answer. Now let us see conclusion. What is the theme of the question? Fundamental rights are important to achieving constitutional morality and to achieving democratic governance. So constitutional morality means an individual holding the constitutional values. Individual means here the government also. Even the government should hold the constitutional values. What are they? Liberty, equality, justice, etc. And here fundamental rights are helping in democratic governance also. How? Accountability, transparency, rule of law, and the last one was by upholding the judicial review. So such type of things fundamental rights are facilitating. So because of these things democratic governance is possible. That's the core of the answer. Now coming to the conclusion, fundamental rights are not just defensive shields of the citizens. Very, very important word. They are not just defensive shields. They are architectural pillars of the democratic ethos. So please use such type of phrases. They will elevate your answer. So fundamental rights are not only shields from the state actions, they are actually the pillars of democratic ethos. So by embedding the constitutional morality into legal framework, they ensure what they fundamental rights. So they ensure democratic governance is not merely procedural governance. Actually, like periodic elections, that is not democratic governance. What is democratic governance? Substantive governance is democratic. That means ensuring the dignity, ensuring the liberty, ensuring the equality. That is what a democratic governance is. So you can write like this: fundamental rights are not just defensive shields; they are architectural pillars. And when the constitutional morality is embedded in the legal framework, obviously we achieve what? A qualitative democratic governance, that is which can secure dignity, which can secure liberty and equality. So this is how the concept of fundamental rights and constitutional morality can be linked to. So I think I have explained you very in detail about how fundamental rights can be used for these two things. So now let us just confirm if it is clear to you, so that I can go to the next question. So please confirm me once. Is it clear? The conceptual part, is it clear?
Yes, sir. So I have one doubt here.
Shreya and Jai Rohan, is it clear? Please confirm me so that I can go to the next one. Yeah, Krishna Banu, is it clear? Krishna Banu,
Yes, sir.
the
So I
first
have one.
question.
So when I am writing the answer, like I am getting a
How
gap.
fundamental rights? Yeah, Shreya, it's fine. Krishna Banu, can you please confirm me? Is it clear? The first question. It is explanation is done. How fundamental rights are helping in constitutional morality and democratic governance? What are the important points you have to write? Did you get the point? Krishna Banu, please confirm me. Clear, sir. Yeah, fine. So, chalo, let us discuss the second question. Second question. See, these are
Sir,
very interesting questions actually. So we have a lot to learn from these questions. So this reverse engineering actually we consciously designed it because the questions should be such that if I discuss one question, at least 3 to 4 important concepts should be done. Such type of questions we are making here, at least 3 to 4 different concepts here. In the previous question, fundamental rights concept, constitutional morality concept, and democratic governance concept, three concepts are covered in one question. So in the same way we are making the questions. So please have this interconnection between the topics. Now let us see second question. Okay, listen me carefully. The future of Indian constitutionalism. Ism. What is mean by ism? Set of ideas. Any set of ideas is called as ism. So constitutionalism means all the ideas which are related to the constitution. That means liberty, equality, justice, fraternity, they are constitutionalism. Now the future of these values simply will depend not only on the protection of fundamental rights, but also on the effective realization of the constitutional obligations which are embedded in the DPSPs. So I'm trying to decode the question. If you have to see constitutional values in 2070 in India, that means in the future, if you have to see constitutional values intact, not only fundamental rights, you should also focus on the DPSPs. That is what the question. Okay, so the future is depending on not only protection of fundamental rights but also on the DPSP effective realization. So right now two things are clear. Number one, fundamental rights are enforceable, yes or no? But if you see DPSPs, they are not enforceable. Yes or no? They are not enforceable. You cannot go to court to enforce the DPSPs. Now the question says, if in future constitutionalism should be surviving in India, if you want that, then not only enforcement of fundamental rights, even the DPSPs should be properly enforced in India. That means obligations. whatever the state obligations which are mentioned in DPSPs, they also have to be embodied in the constitution. Only then these constitutional values will be intact by 2070 or 80 in the future. That is the idea. Now coming to the directive word, critically evaluate. Critically evaluate. So always remember, when there is critical evaluation, you have to go for positive approach and negative approach, both the limitations and the positive opportunities in the question, both you have to analyze. So not only presenting the facts, but even the opinions you should give, and opinion should be not personal but authoritative opinion. Somebody has to tell like that. For example, law commission said something, or for example, administrative reforms commission said something about this. So like that you have to quote. So this is the question. Let us say how introduction can be built for this. And remember, this is a 15 marker question. 15 marker question, that means 250 words. For introduction, how much marks you will get? 1.5. For conclusion, 1.5. And another 12 marks you will get for body. And if you have to get 12 marks, at least 8 to 9 different side headings you have to put. And within each, one analytical point, one substantiation point. So that means 18 different points you have to write within the answer. That is what least expected. Okay. Now introduction. What is the question? Fundamental rights are important. Equally, DPSPs are also to be effectively realized. To for what? To constitutionalism to be surviving. That's the idea. So Indian constitutionalism seeks transformative synthesis. So use the words, very very important. Our constitutional ideas, what they say, transformative synthesis of liberty and justice. So our constitution is a mix of what? Number one, liberty on one side, and number two, justice on other side. So simply I am saying something about this constitutionalism. Okay, first point. Next, B.R. Ambedkar warned us. What did he warn? Political equality is guaranteed through fundamental rights, cannot endure. So whatever we are giving the equality, political equality, it will never be same. What if you don't have social equality, if you don't have economic equality? So simply he is saying political equality is possible only with social equality and economic equality. So if you don't have these two things, then obviously political equality you cannot achieve. That's what Ambedkar is saying. And how political equality can be achieved? By fundamental rights. How economic inequality and social equality is achievable? Through DPSPs. Yes or no? So Ambedkar is saying you should have these three things: political equality, social equality, economic equality. That means again fundamental rights should be equally seen with the DPSPs. Okay, that is the idea. So therefore, part 3 protects the citizens against the arbitrary state action. But part 4, that is DPSPs, what do? They create socio-economic conditions which are necessary for meaningful exercise of those rights. So fundamental rights we have, but to exercise them, what we need? DPSP's implementation. So unless you have DPSP implementation, you cannot exercise fundamental rights clearly. For example, there is a DPSP article 36. What it says? Prevention of the concentration of the wealth. Let us say concentration of the wealth should be prevented in India. If this article is not implemented, if this DPSP is not implemented, now can you exercise freedom of expression? Can you exercise the freedom of profession? If you don't have money, if you don't have wealth at all, access to wealth, how can you go for a new profession or doing some business? So fundamental rights are meaningless without DPSPs. That is the idea. So within the introduction, I said what is Indian constitutionalism. I said the idea of the B.R. Ambedkar, the importance of political equality, social equality, and economic equality, and at the same time, I am saying the future of the constitutional governance depends both on the preservation of liberty on one side and realization of the social democracy on other side. So it's like a mini answer you have to write, because it is 15 marker question. I don't expect you write all these 7 lines. Only among them you should write at least 3 to 4 lines of introduction. So that's the idea. Let us go into the body. What should be the core answer? The core answer is DPSPs are also important. For what? For constitutionalism. If India has to see constitutional values in future, that means DPSPs should also be included. That's the idea. So let us see how DPSPs are foundation of social democracy. Realizing the substantive equality. So equality is ensured through political fundamental rights exercising, but substantive equality is possible only with the DPSPs. Let us say Article 38. What it say? Reduction of the socio-economic inequalities. So every state should strive, the government should strive for what? Social inequalities should be reduced. If this is not implemented, then how can somebody go for freedom of trade? How can somebody go for freedom of occupation? That is the idea. So Article 39, what it says? Equitable distribution of resources. First, this is to be included. If this is not enforced, then how structural inequalities are going to be addressed? No, right? So DPSPs move the constitution beyond formal equality towards a substantive justice by addressing the structural inequalities. So what I am saying is, fundamental rights are there and they will give equality on a political sense, but to get real equality, people need economic resources, people need social status. So for that, these article 38, 39 and 46 should be implemented. That's the idea. Example is reservation policies. Yes or no? Reservation policy, what it does, if you are given special treatment in the public employment competitive exam, let us say, then what is happening, the real justice is possible, the real empowerment is possible. So that is what reservation policies, aspirational district program, targeted welfare interventions, all these are what they are, simply in enforcement of the DPSPs. So only when you have DPSPs enforced, you can see fundamental rights are realized. Now, how we have to convert our fundamental rights which are there into capabilities, different capabilities, how you can convert? If you have article 14, that is not enough equality, you have to turn it into social justice through article 38. So only when article 38 is implemented, article 14 will get its meaning. Okay. Now article 19, if you have only freedom, that is not enough. Even you should have right to work. Only freedom is not enough, right? Even you should have the right to work. Only when you have right to work, you will get income, and when you get income, you can exercise the freedom. That is what article 19. So here the core idea is DPSPs are also to be implemented. Only when they are implemented, fundamental rights can be used. Okay. So article 21, life and dignity, it is possible only when there is public health. If you don't have proper public health, how can you have a dignified life? How can you have a life? First of all, right, life itself, when you don't have the public health infrastructure. So you got the point, right? The core point is simple. DPSPs are also important. You have to just highlight that point. So DPSPs provide the material foundation which is necessary for transforming the legal freedoms which are there in the fundamental rights into the lived realities. So to convert fundamental rights into reality, you need DPSPs. That's the idea. Now, this is like analytical point, constitutional evolution. If you see, from hierarchy to harmony, once upon a time, fundamental rights are preferred over the DPSPs by judiciary. Every Supreme Court judgment used to tell that fundamental rights are important, not the DPSPs. This is what the tone of the judiciary. This is the evolution from how fundamental rights and DPSPs are once upon a time hierarchical in nature, but now they are equal. Their status is equal. This is the idea. From here to here, how the evolution happened. If you see first Champakam Dorairajan case, you might have already studied. In this case, Supreme Court said fundamental rights are important, not the DPSPs. But when it comes to 1973, the Keshwananda Bharati case, what did the Supreme Court say? No, there should be a balance between fundamental rights and the DPSPs. And the same thing repeated in the Minerva Mills case also. This is in 1980. What did it say? There should be a harmony between fundamental rights and DPSPs, and that harmony is integral to the constitutional scheme. Integral means what? It is like part of the basic structure. Okay, it is part of the basic structure. So you have to quote these three judgments because to understand the relation between fundamental rights and the DPSPs. So is this the core demand of the question? No, this is not the core demand of the question. But why we are adding this point? It will add at least 0.5 marks more to your answer if others are not mentioned in these cases. So expansive interpretation of Article 21. This is also judiciary has done, and now different rights were included in Article 21, like right to livelihood, right to education, right to health. And once upon a time, Article 21 is like a very limited article. Only there is right to privacy and right to life and liberty. Life and liberty. Only these two words are mentioned. But right now, in the Olga Telly's case, if you see Olga Telly's case, here right to livelihood, right to education, right to shelter, right to health, even recently right against climate change. You might have known right against climate change. So all these rights are interpreted rights, and now Supreme Court is saying fundamental rights are also expanding, but DPSPs are very important to implement that fundamental rights. So that's the idea. Now, relevance in the 21st century. So relevance in the 21st century. This is like an excellent point. So contemporary period, if you see, because the question is about future, right? In the future, if you have to have constitutionalism, then fundamental rights should be there, then DPSP should be there. That is the question. So if we see in the 21st century, we have economic inequalities. This is one of the challenge, a future challenge. And now most of the challenges are socio-economic in nature. They are not political in nature. If you see, yes or no, in India, anybody can establish a political party. You have that freedom, but anybody can that easily establish a, let us say, corporate firm or establish a business. Why? Because people are lacking wealth. They don't have real access to the wealth. But to establish a political party, it is very easy. Nothing. You don't need any to register a political party. You don't need any wealth. But to really establish a corporate company, you need wealth, right? Access to wealth, and this access to wealth is not guaranteed in India right now. Why? Because DPSPs are not implemented properly. So now the future will be economic inequalities, concentration of wealth is happening. Even the Oxfam report, if you say Oxfam report, what did it say? The top 10% of Indians are holding at least 50% of the wealth. Only 10% people are holding the 50% wealth. So how can you expect every Indian is exercising the same political equality? No, right? So we are equal only in literal term, but in reality we are not equal. So for that, what we needed, article 38 and 39 should be implemented. Now the future of work, if you see in future, AI, automation, gig employment, all these are actually increasing the relevance of these articles. We have article 41 and 43, the right to management of workers in the institutions like companies. So here, when you go for these different types of work in the future, this article 41 and 43 needs to be focused upon. Now climate constitutionalism, that is article 48A constitutionalism. In the constitution, it is newly added article 48A. Okay, so this was added in during the emergency period. It assumes greater significance amidst the climate change and ecological degradation. So what I am actually discussing here, I am discussing there are challenges to future, and those challenges can be addressed only with DPSPs. So again, I am focusing more on the DPSPs. Now let us see social inclusion, another problem. So social inclusion means all communities are not included in uh, the maybe the political space, or maybe the economic space. Everybody is not included in the developmental part. So there comes the article 44. What it says, it shapes the debates on gender justice and national integration. So article 44 is very important in that aspect, DPSPs. Okay, now consequently DPSPs are right now the central to constitutional resilience in the 21st century. So in a way, I have been explaining the importance of these DPSPs. Now, but still, what is the problem? The problem is implementation deficit. So please use these words. Deficit. Deficit is an economic word actually, fiscal word, but I'm using here in a politic subject. Implementation deficit. What is the problem with DPSPs? They are not enforceable. So despite their constitutional significance, they continue to face the structural constraints. The justiciability under Article 39. That means DPSPs, if you go to the courts, they are not enforceable. So that's the idea. Fiscal limitations and governance deficits. And again, see, governments are also generally not that villains to implement these DPSPs. Actually, they want to implement the DPSPs itself. The problem is money. They don't get money, right? So if you have, everybody should have housing, everybody should have shelter, everybody should have public health. If this is to be realized, lot of lakhs of crores we have to spend. So here the problem is fiscal limitation and governance deficit is there. Another one is electoral populism. Most of the times we don't focus on structural reforms. Structural reforms means implementing the DPSPs. But rather than going for implementing the DPSPs, we are focusing only on temporary things, electoral populism. So these are like challenges. This is the reasons why we are not implementing the DPSPs. Now, moreover, the failure of the political branches to adequately realize the DPSPs has compelled the courts to expand Article 21 to address the governance failure. This is excellent point because actually Article 36 to Article 52, I think. So these DPSPs, okay, they are the responsibility of whom? The state. But actually the state is not doing these, implementing these articles, Article 36 to Article 52. For that reason, now judiciary entered into this area. This is called as judicial activism, if you know that. So judicial activism, through that Article 21 is expanded. Right to shelter, instead of going for right to this state is giving the shelter. Now the judiciary says right to shelter is a part of Article 21. So it's an alternative route to the legislator or the executive role. So in a way, judiciary can also play a role in expansion of the DPSPs in realization. But the problem is, while this strengthens the rights protection, excessive judicialization risks blurring the separation of power. Obviously, right? See, actually, it is the legislature and the executive who should implement the DPSPs. Judiciary only, the role is adjudication, but right now judiciary is also focusing on implementation of the DPSPs. But that's not the sustainable thing because separation of powers are there clearly. Whose role, who has to do, that need to be very clear. And ultimately, it leads to what? If the judiciary is doing all these things, then it will weaken the democratic accountability because it is the MPs and MLAs. They have to do this work. Okay, coming to the conclusion. How can I write the conclusion? Constitution does not envisage a choice between liberty and justice. See, if you are given with choice, whether do you choose the liberty or do you choose the justice, that's not how the human life works. We need both justice and liberty. I need freedom at the same time. I don't want anybody to interfere in my life. That's what justice is all about. So liberty and justice should go both hand in hand, and that's what the balance between fundamental rights and DPSPs. Liberty means fundamental right, justice means DPSP simply. So constitution never thought there should be a choice between these two, rather both should exist. That's what constitutionalism. Now, fundamental rights secure the citizens against the arbitrary power, while DPSPs obligate the state to create conditions in which the freedom becomes meaningful. So, only when there is DPSPs which are implemented under such conditions, fundamental rights can really be meaningful. That's the idea. So, as reaffirmed in the Minerva Mills case, the future of constitutionalism lies in what? Preserving this balance. The balance between what? Individual rights, that is fundamental right, and social transformation, that is DPSPs. Thereby realizing the preamble's promise of the constitutional values like justice, liberty, equality, and fraternity. So within the conclusion, I have been writing importance of fundamental rights and DPSPs balance. Also, I am quoting a judicial case, and I am saying the need of balance between both individual rights and social transformation. So, if you can write 2 to 3 important lines among these 7 lines, that is more than enough for this question. Okay, so I think this is an excellent concept. What is the concept? The concept is fundamental rights are important, at the same time DPSPs are also important. So write that balance, whatever the balance we need for the future. If the constitutionalism has to be there, obviously we need this balance. Even this DPSPs needs enforcement. Okay, this is the idea. But the practical problem is we don't have money, that much of money with the government. So this is for the 2 questions model answers of today. Now, can you please confirm me if it is clear, the conceptual part? Is it clear? Krishna and Shreya and everybody, can you please confirm me? Shreya, it's okay. Yeah, fine. Krishna Banu, is it okay? Sir, where can I get evaluated copies of yesterday and also PDFs of today's session clear with today's part? Thank you so much for that. You will get your evaluated copies from Naveen sir in the second floor at the institute. Your a mentors room is there. There Naveen sir is there only for Margadarshi, especially he's for Margadarshi. So he will be having all the evaluated copies. Yes, for PDF copy, right now Telegram is not accessible, right? Because of this temporary ban. Right now we are providing PDF copy in the app itself. Directly you will get within the app only. But right now you can just text me so that I can share the PDF copies. You can just text me. So I'm giving you the number also. My number. You can just text me so that I can send you the Jai Rohan. You can just text me so that I can share you today's material and PDFs. For today, from tomorrow you will get in the app itself. Okay, so this is for today. I hope you have got the conceptual part right. I have been putting all my efforts genuinely, so you might have understood, because it's not so easy to discuss for 20-25 minutes a question, the total theme within 20 to 25 minutes. So I have been putting all my efforts genuinely, and I think you use it for your development of the skill, especially the conceptual part. And when you write the answers, the evaluator and the mentorship, that will give you other perspective, that is how to improve the answer writing. Right now my focus is on the conceptual building. So please, first content should be there, then structure. Okay, first content, then structure. Focus on the content improvement, and I have been adding little value addition for you. And number two, next we focus more on the answer writing part. That means after 3 to 4 days, because this is the start of this, we are not judging you much, you just keep on writing. From next 2 to 3 days, I'm going to take your papers and I will evaluate them once, and I will give you the right structure, how to write a proper answer. Okay, so this is for today. If you have any query, we will address. Otherwise, we can just close the session. If you have any queries, write, improve your answers. Whatever you have written yesterday, and based on the feedback, please improve your answers. So we can meet again tomorrow, 4 to 5 session. Thank you so much.